the dream. It's a metaphor that is used widely in A Course in Miracles. And tonight's section is a further elaboration on the substitute that the ego does. So when it speaks of a dream, starting from the ego's experience of that, it's an ego dream of its ability to control reality by finding or forming a substitute. And it makes a worldview out of it and then keeps that worldview as its preference. So this is an ego activity, substituting for true reality, a world of its own making. This is where the original error started, which was to seek for any kind of seeking, particularly seeking for truth outside of God's plan, results in substituting a world of fear in place of God's plan. Everything cascades from there, including the projection of that error outward onto the world, outside of God's plan for a truth, for an alternative, and it initiates a view of being fearful. And this fear is too uncomfortable to live with internally, and so it's projected outward onto the world, becomes the ego's worldview. And now the world that you see, each of us sees the world according to our own perception. That world is the world that your ego has made, that you have projected. So this is a further error to believe that the world you projected, that illusion is true and is the real world. The second error, because this is done in a state of fear, the ego believes now that the world is the source of fear, and that the world seems to be attacking, because it's fear, I'm afraid of the world seems to be attacking me. The ego feels vulnerable to that attack. This is what I call the victimhood illusion. The world I projected out there, which is fearful, seems to be attacking me, and I'm afraid of it now. I feel like I'm a victim. I'm vulnerable to it. All this is, as you can tell, quite insane. Nevertheless, this is the basis for the dream. And so how does the ego respond to an evil world that seems to be attacking you? Well, the ego wants control. And so it judges the world as evil and unworthy and as full of terror. Well, as you can tell, this is extremely anxious. What we're talking about here is a world full of terror would cause anybody to shake, quake in their shoes. The ego therefore attempts in its control scheme to triumph over the world that it's projected, to control it, and in return attacks back. So the world it projected seems to be afraid, the ego seems vulnerable. In its effort to control it, attacks back. So now the ego is involved in pure insanity. It's created an illusion, it becomes afraid of the illusion, and it's attacking the illusion in order to defend itself. Well, this is what the ego has to offer. And I'll say, just as one final comment here, that in between all the battles, this is the battleground, in between all these battles, the ego seeks from time to time to take a time out for a special relationship. And then back to battles.
Does not a world that seems quite real arise in dreams? Yet think what this world is. It is clearly not the world you saw before you slept. Rather, it is a distortion of the world, planned solely around what you would have preferred. Here, you are free to make over whatever seemed to attack you and change it into a tribute to your ego, which was outraged by the attack. This would not be your wish unless you saw yourself as one with the ego, which always looks upon itself and therefore on you as under attack and highly vulnerable to it.
We refer to the world you saw before you slept and a distortion of the world. So it would be better not to think of that as the planet, as a physical sphere, but think of it instead as the way your mind thinks about the world. And no two of us think about the world exactly the same. 7 billion people have 7 different experiences in the world and therefore represent it in their mind differently. So we're talking about your perception of life, of reality, of the world. It's a perceptual take on things. And so distortions come in, a distortion of the world planned solely around what your fearful mind would have preferred. And so this is the ego's scheme that it would be free to make over its own worldview. And as we said earlier, because the ego is centered on fear, it feels as though it's being attacked by this world. And that becomes the central theme of the ego. It's a tribute to your ego, which is outraged by the attack. The ego thrives in this environment, feeling fear, feeling it's being attacked by something out there. It doesn't really matter what it is that's out there. The ego has a general view that it's unsafe and out to get it. And here's the second error, the more serious error. It's not so unusual that the ego believes those things. The more serious error is here when you saw yourself as one with the ego. So now all that chaos that we just referred to, which all ego does that, it's the second error, the more deeply troubling one, is that we think we are the ego. And that's a mistake that can be corrected. And herein is salvation, not that the ego would change its worldview, but that we would stop seeing ourselves as the ego. And by the way, the ego loves to look upon itself. It wants you to preoccupy your attention with it, because when it does that, it draws you into its perception, its worldview, and thus you become confused and think that that's who you are.
Dreams are chaotic because they are governed by your conflicting wishes, and therefore they have no concern with what is true. They are the best example you could have of how perception can be utilized to substitute illusions for truth. You do not take them seriously on awakening because the fact that reality is so outrageously violated in them becomes apparent. Yet they are a way of looking at the world and changing it to suit the ego better. They provide striking examples, both of the ego's inability to tolerate reality and of your willingness to change reality on its behalf.
This worldview is a tribute to the ego, and it's a way of looking at the world that is well suited to the ego. I find that once we look clearly at this error, it's pretty easy to convince people that they don't want to continue believing in that. It would make no sense to continue to believe in that. Forever be intent on substituting its illusions, its worldview for truth. Remember, the original error was to seek for truth somewhere else other than from within creation, to find its own truth, a pseudo-truth outside of creation. This comes back to the idea of the original error of substituting for we were given the truth of all creation at the beginning. When we descend out of that, looking for something else, it's a willingness to change the reality on the behalf of the ego. Think of it as just a grave error that we stand in need of correcting.
These paragraphs, this notion, this chapter is giving me a great insight, a different, has opened up to me in a different way. The whole concept of not everything I see is an illusion, nothing I see is real. And when you get it, you think, oh, it's a dream. In my dream, I'm asleep, I'm dreaming, and it's very real. It's a real world that I'm involved in. And then it says, you don't take them seriously on awakening because the fact that reality is so outrageously violated in them becomes apparent. It's not outrageously violated when I'm awake and I see separation, because that's something my ego has lured me into accepting as a reality, and that illusion is truth. And this has been really helpful to me to grasp that concept. You do not find the differences between what you see in sleep and on awakening disturbing. You recognize that what you see on awakening, what you see on waking is blotted out in dreams. Yet on awakening, you do not expect it to be gone. In dreams, you arrange everything. People become what you would have them be, and what they do, you order. No limits on substitution are laid upon you. For a time, it seems as if the world were given you to make it what you wish. You do not realize that you are attacking it, trying to triumph over it and make it serve you.
So let's assume ego and what this looks like from the ego's perspective. And you can sense its determination to remain in control. In dreaming, you arrange everything. You're in control. People become what you would have them be, and they do whatever you order them to do. And it seems as if the world were given you to make it what you wish. So this is perfect. This is exactly what the ego likes it to be. Now, let's peel the curtain back a little further and realize that as we walk about, we are not lying in bed at night, but we are walking about in life with our impressions of people, places, and things, all of which were formed from our past. For a time, it seems as if the world were given you and you make it what you wish. So the ego then takes that event from the past and projects it onto that person, and it becomes the dominant emotional current in the ego's mind at that time. You do not realize you are attacking them. You are projecting this disturbance, these troubling, fearful, anxiety-ridden thoughts and beliefs outward onto that person. You don't realize you're attacking them in an attempt to assert that you've got it right, that your judgment is true, that the illusions your mind believes in are real, trying to triumph over them or it and make the world serve you. And as we said earlier, the fact that the ego does that, it will always do that. 7 billion people and all their egos do that. It's not a surprise. The more disturbing feature is that we think we are that ego. It's a case of mistaken identity. In the other sessions, I've called it a misplaced faith in the ego's guidance, instead of placing our faith and our identity in the hands of the Holy One. Come back to this section here and ponder it for a moment until it becomes clear how these things have occurred in your own mind and the trap that it represents. This is what we call the prison of the ego. Tonight, we're using the term dream. In other nights, we'll use the term prison. Same thing. It's a nightmare where that always involves this sense of discomforture, that the emotional level is one of difficulties and discomfort.
Dreams are perceptual temper tantrums in which you literally scream, "I want it thus," and thus it seems to be. And yet the dream cannot escape its origin. Anger and fear pervade it, and in an instant, the illusion of satisfaction is invaded by the illusion of terror. For the dream of your ability to control reality by substituting a world that you prefer is terrifying. Your attempts to blot out reality are very fearful, but this you are not willing to accept. And so you substitute the fantasy that reality is fearful, not what you would do to it. And thus is guilt made real.
I want it thus. And so the line that we've all heard, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? Well, the ego wants to be right. It wants, said another way, its judgment, its perception, it wants to assert that that is real and true. It is about a dream of ego's ability to control reality. And so this is the original error of a substitution for, it's a fantasy that has nothing to do with the creator's reality, the source of all things. It asserts that the illusion is true and real and fearful. And from that, all problems stem. This is the original error, the original source of projection outward. This is where fear begins. This is where guilt begins. The ego wants control and it's angry about it. It's determined. It wants it its way because the ego is afraid to let reality be as it truly is. It's afraid of that. So it wants to, and it is willing to fight for control. And it creates, therefore, an illusion of being happy in control satisfaction, but it has to fight for that. So that is also an illusion of terror because it's a constant battle to assert its perception in the place of truth. Underneath that, when we become fooled by the ego, represents an unwillingness to accept responsibility that we're the ones that's making that illusion. This is the greater mistake, is not recognizing your part in it. And so in the substitution that the ego makes, it's a belief that reality is fearful. And this translates into the idea if reality is fearful, then the source of all reality must be fearful too. God must be feared, says the ego. And guilt then arises because the mind has committed the ultimate error of snubbing the love of God for this fearful, terrorizing view of life. It would call it a fantasy. All this results in crucifying yourself, in bringing down a worldview of terror upon yourself, of fear and anxiety. This is exemplified in the lesson, it can be but myself I crucify.
Dreams show you that you have the power to make a world you would have it be, as you would have it be, and that because you want it, you see it. And while you see it, you do not doubt that it is real. Yet here is a world clearly within your mind that seems to be outside. You do not respond to it as though you made it, nor do you realize that the emotions the dream produces must come from you. It is the figures in the dream and what they do that seem to make the dream. You do not realize that you are making them act out for you, for if you did, the guilt would be theirs, and the illusions of satisfaction would be gone. In dreams, these features are not obscure. You seem to waken, and the dream is gone. Yet what you fail to recognize is that what caused the dream has not gone with it. Your wish to make another world that is not real remains with you. And what you seem to waken to is but another form of this same world you see in dreams. All your time is spent in dreaming. Your sleeping and your waking dreams have different forms, and that is all. Their content is the same. They are your protest against reality and your fixed and insane idea that you can change it. In your waking dreams, the special relationship has a special place. It is the means by which you try to make your sleeping dreams come true. From this, you do not waken. The special relationship is your determination to keep your hold on unreality and to prevent yourself from waking. And while you see more value in sleeping than in waking, you will not let go of it.
Your sleeping and your waking dreams have different forms, but that's all. The process that generates them is the same process. Thoughts emerge out of your own mind that project onto a view that seems to be real. Their content is the same. And so the bigger point that I want you to take away from all that we've read up till now is that we got hooked on believing that these things were true of us. The fact that they're true of an ego, again, is not a surprise. Your wish to make another world that is not real remains with you. This is the wishing. Careful, my friends. This is the wish that keeps the dream going. Your wish to make another world. Vian, this is the opposite of letting it be as it is. It's a wish to make another world that is not real, showing up on a daily basis, even in relationships. Have you ever wanted a person to be different than the way they are? Well, that's not letting them be as they are. That's struggling against the way they are. It's as most of us have been through some program where we realize that we can't change other people, and that the sooner that you come around to that point of view, the better. Wow, that could be used to symbolize the Holy Spirit. It's just a way of operating with the visual domain. So here she comes.
The Holy Spirit, ever practical in his wisdom, accepts your dreams and uses them as means for waking. You would have used them to remain asleep. I said before that the first change before dreams disappear is that your dreams of fear are changed to happy dreams. That is what the Holy Spirit does in the special relationship. He does not destroy it, nor snatch it away from you, but he does use it differently, as a help to make his purpose real to you. The special relationship will remain, not as a source of pain and guilt, but as a source of joy and freedom. It will not be for you alone, for therein lay its misery. As its unholiness kept it a thing apart, its holiness will become an offering to everyone.
Go that there's a sleeping dream and there's your waking dream, but they are essentially the same content. So you can really think of them as more alike than different. But now we have a reminder of the happy dream. This is different than the illusions of the dream of terror, the nightmare. This is the solution that the Holy Spirit brings. And please get this. The Holy Spirit will work with whatever you give her. She accepts your dreams and uses them as a means for waking. So all that dreaming we did can be utilized for her, repurposed on behalf of healing and waking. She takes your dreams of fear and changes them into happy dreams. A happy dream is what we experience as we climb the ladder of prayer. We're still in a state of perception, still interpreting the way we think and feel life is, but now we're doing it under the guidance of the Holy Spirit, and so it becomes a happy dream. And I was very encouraged here because it's said it now 3 or 4 times in the last chapter or two, how the special relationship will remain. It does not end, but it's transformed into a source of joy and freedom by being now seen as a part of a bigger purpose than just two people. Its holiness will become an offering to everyone.
I love this because I know this is true. And you always say it's experiential class or curriculum. I know the Holy Spirit uses my dreams as a means for me to awaken, because if I substitute something for when I'm in fear, I stay in my dream and I stay in my chaoticness. And that sentence a couple weeks back that said, you know, the Holy Spirit can do anything. And so it's up to me to not go to substitute, but to, in that moment of fear or any dream, ask the Holy Spirit to help me. And then my dream truly is changed to a happy dream, because if I'm truly willing to ask and not run with my ego to the substitution, I'm like, wow, look, this is amazing. The Holy Spirit can do anything, but it's truly up to me, as we always say, because I have that free will.
Is the shift from a controlling ego that wants it its own way, that really doesn't want to invite anyone else into the party. It wants a separate view to dominate and triumph. It's a shift out of that into one where the Holy Spirit's got the answer and we're on the receiving end of that happy dream. And so it's a much different orientation. Our mind has fallen into a habit of being in control, of interpreting life as we wish it to be, rather than the way the Holy Spirit sees it to be. It's like trying to read in the dark. We've been trying to understand life in the dark world of the ego. Wonderful freedom and liberation to not have to be in control, to relinquish that into the hands of a higher power that sees the entire picture, sees the wholeness of all reality, has all the relationships that exist in her mind, and knows exactly how each piece can help another. And therefore, every situation you enter is an opportunity for healing and a holy encounter. Julie?
Your special relationship will be a means for undoing guilt in everyone, blessed through your holy relationship. It will be a happy dream, and one which you will share with all who come within your sight. Through it, the blessing the Holy Spirit has laid upon it will be extended. Think not that he has forgotten anyone in the purpose he has given you. And think not that he has forgotten you to whom he gave the gift. He uses everyone who calls on him as means for the salvation of everyone. And he will waken everyone through you who offered your relationship to him. If you but recognized his gratitude, or mine through his, for we are joined as in one purpose, being of one mind with him.
I love that last part there. The thought here at the beginning is a special relationship that had threads of guilt woven into it and that we believed to be real and meaningful, now becomes a means for undoing guilt, but not just between the two people involved, because that's merely a symbol or a miniature of the undoing of all guilt. This is profound, but it's the pattern in Course in Miracles. Anytime we undo guilt in a relationship with any one person, we are undoing guilt in our mind, which was where the source of the guilt came from. And that has ripple effects outward into all relationships. Everyone becomes blessed through your forgiveness in holy relationships. This is what a happy dream is a recognition that healing extends to everyone, not just to the few. Intellectually, that may not be understood, but this you can grasp by faith. The blessing of the Holy Spirit has assured that the forgiveness is laid upon everyone and will be extended. You can trust it. I call it her universal policy of healing. You can trust her for those matters.
Let not the dream take hold to close your eyes. It is not strange that dreams can make a world that is unreal. It is the wish to make it that is incredible. Your relationship with your brother has now become one in which the wish has been removed because its purpose has been changed from one of dreams to one of truth. You are not sure of this because you think it may be this that is the dream. You are so used to choosing among dreams, you do not see that you have made, at last, the choice between the truth and all illusions.
The issue is the wish to participate in that, the wish to make it, the wish for you to willingly invest your faith in that process of the ego and confuse yourself with it. That's what's incredible. That's the perception that must be corrected, the deeper work. So in the healed relationship, where we have been willing to let go of the guilt, that seemingly with one other person, let's start with simple case of just one other person, your relationship with your brother has now become one in which that wish that we spoke about to participate in the ego's world, in which the wish has been removed because its purpose has been changed from one of dreams to one of truth. It's the desire to wake up again and know the truth. And it's only when we want to wake up that we'll relinquish that wish, and the purpose will have been changed to one of truth. Initially, you're not sure about this transformation because you think it may be this that is the dream. For in other words, you start to climb the ladder of prayer and invest your faith in the light that you're seeing from Spirit. And initially, on that journey, you will not be certain initially of whether you're still dreaming or not, whether these things are coming from your ego. Why? Because you're so used to choosing among dreams that you don't see that you finally left Your wish to continue dreaming will fade gently, and you'll all of a sudden realize at last you've made a whole-souled choice between illusions and the truth. Then this is where people start letting reality be as it is, because they're no longer wishing that they could make things different than they are. You may find yourself in this journey on the ladder where you're not sure because you're so used to dreaming and choosing among dreams, you won't even notice that you're starting to wake up.
Yet heaven is sure. This is no dream. Its coming means that you have chosen truth, and it has come because you have been willing to let your special relationship meet its conditions. In your relationship, the Holy Spirit has gently laid the real world, the world of happy dreams, from which awaking is so easy and so natural. For as your sleeping and your waking dreams represent the same wishes in your mind, so do the real world and the truth of heaven join in the will of God. The dream of waking is easily transferred to its reality, for this dream reflects your will joined with the will of God. And what this will could have accomplished has never not been done.
The parallel here is about your sleeping and your waking dreams. We talked about this earlier. Both of them are ego states. They represent the same wishes in your mind. It's the view of wanting things to be the way you wish them to be. That way. And then there's the direction we're headed up the ladder, where we encounter the real world of the happy dream. And beyond that is the truth of heaven. So the first stage is the ego stage of waking dreams and wishing they were true, wanting to be in control. Second stage is the happy dream. It's under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. We haven't arrived yet. We're still learning, we're still dreaming, but we're turning more and more to the Holy Spirit for guidance. And she starts to enable us to perceive the world, the real world. It's the world that truth and innocence will show us. That's not the end of the journey, however. That's the ladder. That's going back up the ladder. The end of the journey is what we refer to here as the truth of heaven joined in the will of God. That's referred to as a transfer of your training from the happy dream to the truth of heaven and the will of God. You can transfer the Holy Spirit's happy dream of the real world. You can take that learning and transfer into the truth of heaven and the will of God. But you cannot take the ego's view of terror and hatred and transfer that into heaven and the will of God. So the Holy Spirit takes us in our initial state of a nightmare of the ego, transforms that into a happy dream, and the happy dream makes our mind, helps us to find peace so that we are compatible with entering into heaven, the truth of heaven. It's a very gentle process. Suffice it to say, it's all divinely created plan. It works for everyone. And whether you understand it or not, the important thing, as Susie echoed a little earlier, is that you experience these things. Next class is on the light in the dream. Remember, we said the Holy Spirit takes us from a dark dream into a happy dream. And the beginning of that process is the appearance of light in the dream. And